Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be talking about improving conversion for high frequency purchases using PayPal. The first question is, hey, what do you mean by high frequency purchases? I would say, good question. That's what I asked my boss. But before we get stuck in, let's do a few round of introductions and then we'll get to what high frequency is and what my boss told me, which I think was debatably not quite accurate, but I'll tell you what it is, what in my definition. But I am a senior product lead on the PayPal checkout team. I lead our native checkout experiences and here to talk to you about how do you improve conversion for these high frequency apps. And I have my co-presenter Jax with me. So over to you, Jax.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Jax. I am the mobile tech lead, so iOS and Android for the Braintree SDKs. So we'll be focusing on these features as they apply to the mobile SDKs specifically, but it will also eventually be available for all of the other SDKs that PayPal offers. So I'll hand it off to Akul for the first part, and then I'll come back to talk code in a bit.
All right, thanks so much, Jax. So where we last left off was, what do you mean by high frequency purchases? So the way I think about it when I think about high frequency purchases, think where you have to make the purchases multiple times a week. So think your rideshare apps that you use. Think about grocery delivery apps or like food delivery apps. So while that's a broader space, what we're going to be talking about here is when you store PayPal as a stored payment method, or what we call vaulting flows, is what we are going to talk about. So think about, let's say, imagine you go back from developer days, you're sitting on like your couch over the weekend, I want to get food delivered. I've added PayPal or Venmo as my payment method there. How do I optimize that experience? And how do I make sure I have a higher chance of success given all the conversion improvements that we'll go through? So that's the high frequency use case. Think rideshare, food deliveries in the stored payment method space. With that, why are we talking about this is what we'll go to first. So we have heard in multiple forums, like forums such as these forums, talking to our merchants, talking to our consumers as to what our problems were. Our problems for adding PayPal as a default payment method to these high frequency apps is there are multiple decision points that a customer has to make. And more often than not, you have a high login friction experience. So going from left to right, first, how many of us have seen like a NASCAR of logos on a specific merchant? Yes. So we have like maybe 6 or 7 payment method options, and out of which I feel PayPal Inc. as a company responsible for quite a few of them. We have PayPal, we have Venmo, we have different payment methods. So that's step one, where we are giving customers so much choice. While that is good, but it is cognitive overload on them as well to figure out, okay, what payment method do I choose? That was problem one that we were looking at when we've heard from all of you. Second is, once a customer decides to click on that PayPal or the Venmo button, then you actually come into this fun login experience, which is where you have to enter your email. If I get my OTP, great, I enter my OTP. So this is a higher login friction experience. So what do we do about that? And then maybe 5 or 10 minutes in, when you're doing all of this, you got your OTP, you have more choices to make, which is what you have the PayPal vaulting agreement page, where again you decide, oh, now I've chosen PayPal, but inside PayPal, what do I choose? Do I choose my credit card? Do I choose my balance? And then, hey, there's a pay later option which is being upsell to me. So what do I do with that? So we took a pause and we said, okay, guys, let's think about it end to end. Customers are telling us about one problem and the other, but how do we rethink the entire user journey and come up with a solution? Because all of us, I think, can agree, the more friction points there are in the user funnel, it leads to lower conversion, and which is bad for all of us, all of our businesses. So with that, I want to show you what we've done, and we've reinvented the whole vaulting experience across the board. Now, if I know it's like post lunch time, we're still, my carbs are sitting heavy, so I'm still like getting into the mood. But if there is one slide and you need to pay attention for like a minute or two, I would say this slide is it. And don't tell me I didn't warn you. So just with that, I'll show you what the new vaulting experience looks like. So on the left-hand side, you have like the existing experience, the still that I showed. On the right-hand side is where we've reinvented the wheel and we've said, okay, how do you get a seamless experience? So fair warning, this was like a fast experience, but I'll just slow it down and just show you in terms of stills as to what we are talking about. So customers can now save PayPal as a payment method on these high frequency purchase apps in 2 clicks. Let's start with the three problem statements that we were talking about. First is upfront selection of PayPal versus Venmo as a payment method. So what we are doing is we're personalizing the payment experience, the presentment experience rather, with something called a payment ready API. So that's focus area one that we'll deep dive into. Second, once you've chosen PayPal or Venmo as a payment method, how do you actually log in to actually transact is where we are actually optimizing, which is where we're going to be talking about how do you app switch a consumer from like a merchant surface into the PayPal app to complete your checkout journey, and all of it via a login mechanism. You might have seen the Face ID in the previous video. And the third part is once you have the consumer in the PayPal app, how do we present a very simple user experience to them, which is very intuitive and reduces cognitive overload, so you can just click your complete your checkout in one go. So with that, I'll focus on like three areas. Remember, payment ready is one, where we actually talk about presentment, how we've optimized that. Second is how we overcome login friction via app switch. That's focus area two. And third is the new vaulting agreement page, where we've actually figured out how do we reduce cognitive overload and load payments much faster. And all of this, because the way I think about payments is we are an enabler to a business when you're purchasing. So when you're in the context of like, let's say purchasing for that food that I was sitting on my weekend and I wanted like some Indian food delivered to my home while I was watching like White Lotus, I actually don't want to go through like 10 minutes of PayPal and setting up and doing all of this. So I just need to do it in 2 clicks and then voila, I get done. So with that, the first of 3 focus areas is how do we personalize presentment of preferred payment options with something called payment ready. So what payment ready here really is, it's a way that helps. It's essentially an API that will add a data-driven signal to help you convert with PayPal or Venmo. What that really means is it starts with how do you identify the customer. So we request our merchants to pass a signal for a customer, either the email or their phone number. There are other additional ways that we're exploring how do we get this information. But if you pass an email and a phone number to us, we determine if the customer is like a PayPal user or a PayPal Inc. user via Venmo. And we figure that out behind the scenes and present either one of 2 options, present PayPal, present Venmo. And behind the scenes, while this seems simplistic, there are a lot of other things that are happening behind the scenes. When we look at the email or the phone number, we look at, do you have like a funding instrument like which is valid behind the scenes? Do you have account that is in good standing? Let's say your account is not restricted by any fraud or risk restrictions. It doesn't have any, it has sufficient funds. So all of the checks that we are doing, but imagine upfront. So the power of Payment Ready API is just by passing us an identifier, we are able to help you recommend one of the buttons. You know which button to present and which will have a higher likelihood of success. So that's the power of Payment Ready API, where you're reducing the number of options that you need to present upfront by just presenting the highest converting option upfront. So that's one way that we've actually reinvented the space. Moving over to the second part, let's say you've actually finished finished calling the Payment Ready API. You presented either PayPal or Venmo as a button. Let's say for this purpose of the example, you've picked up PayPal. Once you click on PayPal, you're still going to have some sort of login friction. So what are we doing with that? For those users who we've recommended where you choose PayPal, we've seen some sort of an indication behind the scenes that there's a high likelihood that you have the PayPal app installed. And if you have the PayPal app installed, why are we asking you to do a login experience? So what we are helping you to do here is eliminate the login friction. And when we tested this out with some early adopters, we've seen about 7% increase in our conversion rates just in this part of the funnel. So what this does is, let's imagine you're like the food delivery app example again. You click PayPal as a payment method after getting the payment API recommendation. You come over to, you click that PayPal button, you get app switched to the PayPal app. There we use, either you're already logged into the PayPal app, so great, you don't have to do anything. But however, if you're not logged in from a previous session, we use your Face ID, if you signed up for Face ID, to seamlessly log you in. And then once you're logged in, we present the pay sheet or the vaulting agreement pay sheet that we'll see in a few minutes inside the PayPal app. Once you complete the purchase over here, you can go back to your merchant surface and finish adding PayPal or saving PayPal as a stored payment method on the merchant side. So that's the change, the second change that we are making in the space. So just to summarize as to where we were, We spoke about 3 problem statements. One, cognitive overload upfront about choosing multiple payment buttons. How we are tackling that is by the Payment Ready API. Give us a signal about a consumer. We'll tell you what is the likelihood of conversion or likelihood of success of that payment method and which one should you use. Second is once you choose that payment method, how do we seamlessly log the user in? This is via app switch. So that's where we are. The third piece of the puzzle is once the user has like overcome this login friction or they've come into the PayPal app, how do we improve our conversion or success rate at that point of the funnel, which is further down the funnel? So we've looked at different pieces of information over here. We've said there were a lot of different payment methods. There were a lot of different options to choose from. There was a lot of legal verbiage. There was a lot of other text that was there. We looked at it and said, okay, what is the kind of information that our customers are really looking for? And we prioritize that. So now when you look at any pay sheet or like the vaulting agreement page, you'll clearly see that what you can really pay with. You'll have a funding instrument default that is chosen, which can be a preferred instrument from the past purchases. However, if you want to change it, you can go and click that and change that instrument if you wish to change it. Second is we've simplified the agreement terms. Not a lot of users were understanding in our previous versions of this, what do you mean by vaulted purchases? What do you mean by high frequency purchases app? We've tested this version over multiple times and we've come to this where this was the one that was the winner when most people thought that, yes, this is now we understand what are we trying to do with this. So we simplify that agreement language. And third is like a simple agree and continue button. What are you agreeing and continue to? So we've made changes across the board, just capping off all the things. So like I said, customers can now save PayPal as a payment method in really 2 clicks. We started off with Payment Ready where we were recommending you one button between PayPal or Venmo. Once you do that, we seamlessly log you in via switching to the PayPal app. And then once you're in the PayPal app, you're able to like see a seamless experience where you're just able to just click that agree and continue button and complete checkout. With that, the next step would be like, okay, you've spoken about this for the last like 5-10 minutes. What do I as a developer need to really do and actually help me integrate some of this? So we're going to pick up one focus area over here, which is reducing login friction via app switch. And Jax is going to walk us through like, how do you actually get this into your system so you can test and play around?
Awesome. So yeah, like Akul said, I'm going to talk a bit about the code portion. So if you're a developer or hired developers, this is how you see this in your apps. And again, we're just going to be focusing on the Braintree mobile SDKs. This will eventually be available in the web SDKs as well, across both PayPal and Braintree. So the first step is iOS only. It says allow list step in info.plist. And this is essentially saying, okay, my app has permission to now open the PayPal app. So that's the first step in this flow to get it going. From there, it's setting up the universal link. So this is the same for PayPal as it is for any other app that uses universal links to just switch between 2 apps. So for iOS, they use an app site association file. You host that on your website. You put in your app ID as well as a path. And our biggest ask here is just that path is wildcarded because we append some details to the end of the path indicating whether it was a success, a cancel, and some other details to complete the payment. And for Android, they have a similar app site association file, but it's very, like the Google documentation kind of sets up how you would set that up for PayPal. So you create a intent filter. From there, you add code to your app's activities to handle that incoming app link. And then you associate your app and website with your digital asset link. And that's all done on the Google Play Store side of things. And then for both of these flows, the final step is registering your universal links. So we have kind of another step in our control panel where you tell us what that URL is. And we use that URL to just make sure that like nobody's trying to switch to any like nefarious sites or nefarious apps, just as an added layer of security. And then you take that same universal link and you give it to the SDKs. So in this case, it's when instantiating the PayPal client, you pass us that URL in the universal link parameter. And then in the case of iOS as well, on the this like kind of middle snippet of code. Um, iOS has a bit more requirements on the Apple side of things about returning back into an app, where we kind of need this hook into the scene delegate where you pass the URL to us and then we kind of pick up the flow from there. And then the most important piece, how do you do this? So in your PayPal request, the top line in both of these is what the request would look like today on iOS and Android. So the two parameters that you then add to this is the user authentication email, and we do some checks on the back end for eligibility on the account from there, as well as if you want to enable PayPal app switch. So this gives you the ability to kind of roll this out in a bit more of a staged approach if you want to like do some A/B testing. But as Cool said, we've seen a lift on conversion from this, but that tells us like I want to attempt to use this flow. And then this is also available. We didn't cover it in the slides earlier, but it's also available for the PayPal checkout request. So whether or not you're doing one-time checkout or vaulting, you can use this. It's the exact same parameters, this enable PayPal app switch and the user authentication email. And then this is what it looks like when it's all said and done. So this is from our demo app. This is a live demo using my account. So it switches into the app. You click agree and save, and it switches back. So at this point in time, now you can go and create a transaction. And this is significantly faster than the legacy flows on both iOS and Android. We saw like the side-by-side earlier. But yeah, this is not a mock. It's just in our demo app. So yeah, I think we have some time for questions if folks have any. Yeah, so this was focused a bit more on Braintree. So in the Braintree case, you don't get a billing agreement ID back. You get what's called a payment method nonce, and that's a one-time, alphanumeric string that represents that payment method. And then you would use that on your server to then create a transaction. The like recurring billing flow, yes, yeah, for both flows. Yeah, exactly.
So your question was, this is more for native apps, like merchant websites or native apps, to like the PayPal app. Your question was more around how do you get from like a desktop or like a TV sort of a scenario into this. So that's what we are testing our way into. We have some use cases. Let's say I want to purchase like some subscription on a TV. I want to purchase some, like, let's say even for ads on a TV or something of that sort. So that's what we are experimenting our way into it. Based on that, currently our approach is we present like web views, which is what we are planning to, at least that's what exists right now. And we're just planning to go with that, but we're testing our way into how do we get this native app construct into that as well. So that's one of the considerations that we have, but there are other options we are exploring, but that's definitely one of the considerations that we're thinking. So the question was, if you're switching from the merchant app to the PayPal app, how does it go back to the parent app, right?
Yeah, so it'll natively switch back via that universal link. So on iOS or Android, that's all set up to work natively on whichever platform you're on to automatically switch back to the app. You don't have to take any actions or do anything to like force that switch back.
All right, going once, twice. If not, thank you so much, folks. This was at least very helpful for us. So let us know what you think.